we were actually out of the state when that happened, but it was right by where we live. And I had just happened to be going to an appointment this morning and had driven the back way through Castle Rock, and so the procession was coming up. And it was so sad, and I could feel his energy. Like, I was telling him, like, I felt like this, like, I don't know if he was even to talk about it, I don't know if he was pounding on his coffin, but I got this image of him pounding, like, wanting to be with his wife and his baby. And so that was a pretty intense way to start the day today. But it was one of those things. I went to my appointment, and I was, like, laying there thinking, like, wow, like, you know, those are the things that, like, I don't really talk about with people, but that happen. And so to just be like, wow, like, these things, like, there's a lot going on in the world, you know, and sad things, and it's hard, and death is hard. It's a hard thing, like, to face and to work through, and, you know, losing people is hard. And so I think, you know, my belief, because I think everybody has a little bit different take or belief, but I think in the community of mediums, we kind of all believe the same thing, but really, you just keep going on. But you do keep a lot of your filters and, like, patterns of behavior when you pass. So whatever we end up doing tonight, whoever we talk to, they typically are still the same kind of personality, the same kind of energy that they were when they were alive. Because really, your body's not there anymore, but you're still yourself. Does that make sense? Until you incarnate back, you kind of forget some of that stuff, but really, you're still yourself. And so what I need your help with tonight is I'm going to start out just seeing, like, who's here and kind of saying, oh, I see female energy or male energy or whatever. So I need your help in pinpointing who they belong to. It'll be easier because there's a smaller group, and I have a feeling there'll be more than one because it's pretty packed in here. But just remember, too, they're playing charades. So sometimes they might say something, and I might say, oh, I see this, whatever, a tree or whatever it is. It might not connect. Remember it, because I'm telling you, 90% of the time when I do a reading for somebody that we're talking to someone that crossed over, if that happens, they call me like an hour later and they're like, oh my God, I totally forgot. They had this ring and this thing, and that was what they were talking about. So just remember it, like, you know, just remember what they're saying, even if it doesn't quite connect here, because it's such an intense energy to talk to people who have passed that sometimes we're not even sure what's going on until afterwards. And we're like, oh my God, I totally get what that is too. I've also learned to say everything I see and try not to judge it. So I'm just going to keep saying stuff that's coming, whether it makes sense or not to anybody. I know my favorite story to tell is I met with this couple, and they had lost their mother-in-law. And this was several years ago now. And I met them, and I kept seeing this bread machine. And I thought that was the weirdest thing, to see this bread machine image. And I wasn't saying anything for the longest time. And finally I'm like, I can't not, like, this bread machine will not go away. And I was like, what's going on with the bread machine? And they just, like, burst into tears. And I guess it was, like, this point of contention. Their mother-in-law had bought this bread machine. They never used it. And when she died, like, they pulled it out and used it. It was, like, a whole thing. So I've learned my lesson. Like, I'll tell you whatever I see, whether I get it or you get it or whatever, because it's coming from somewhere, someone. And then the most fun thing that happened recently is about, well, I guess it was the beginning of November. I was at the Pueblo Fair, and I was talking to this woman's Irish grandmother, and no joke, my phone rang, and there was a call from Ireland, and it rang a second, like, it called twice, and no one was there either time, but it was from Ireland. Like, it was in Ireland. It said Ireland on my phone. It was a UK code. I was like, holy cow. So she was, like, calling. So weird.
That's so awesome.
It was. So one thing to know is cell phones will go off if they're on, and it's okay if you leave them on or turn them off. I don't actually care. But the spirit world loves energy. So they will suck your batteries dry. They will mess around with your phone. They do all sorts of crazy things. I've had all sorts of crazy things happen over the years. That may or may not happen, but I'm just letting you know. They operate, it's all energy. So in order for a spirit to manifest, they have to have energy. They have to have electricity. So that's why if you've watched any of the shows about haunted houses or anything like that, like the lights flicker or light bulbs pop or things like that, because they're sucking the energy. So I'm going to light a candle, and part of why I do that is because that flame like brings them closer. They're attracted to the energy of it, and it gives them energy, so it makes it easier for me to make a connection with them. So that's why I'm going to light the candle. And I also have some crystals. Crystals are really good for channeling energy too. So again, we're in a nice space, and this is a good vibe, so I think, it'll be good. And then spirits, they have all sorts of information. So besides talking to somebody who's passed away, there's spirit guides, there's angels, there could be information about your life. Like, I think we'll be able to go a little bit deeper layers because there's a small group, so that'll be good too. And then as we go through, I do want to ask, because we are recording this, and so, so we can the world of social media. So if there's anything that comes up through this that you're like, I don't want that out there anywhere, because you never know what the spirits talk about, just let me know. But if you don't care, then you don't care. So just let me know at the end if there's something you want us to take away. So do you guys have any questions?
I just want to tell you that on the way here we were talking about the death of the police officer.
Oh, were you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's sad. I honestly wasn't expecting that, because I knew it happened, and I'm a human being too, right? So I'm just driving, and like I drove over this overpass, and they had the big flag for the procession, but I wasn't expecting to see the procession. And I know myself well enough to know, like, I don't watch a lot of news. He tells me the news. Like, I don't like to see it because I connect with it. It's hard. And so I don't like a lot of violent, scary show. Like, that stuff stresses me out. And so I wasn't expecting to see the hearse, but when that went by and I looked over and I was like, oh man, I knew. Like, as soon as that happened, I saw the image of his face. And so I'm going to have to, it could be a hard thing, but I actually think it's the cool thing about being a psychic or a medium or a channel or a healer, whatever definition you want to give it, is that our role is really to help people and to help the earth. And so the cool thing about it is there's no time or space in their world. So I can go home tonight after this and call that guy in and help release some of his trauma. There's something that John Edwards calls post-traumatic death syndrome. So if you die suddenly and you weren't ready for it, and especially if you're not very spiritual, it can be really traumatic. And that's why a lot of spirits roam around homes and places like that you hear that are haunted, because they might not have any idea. So like when John Edwards talks about crossing over, that's essentially what it is. So that's something I can help that officer with. Like, it's in my space to do that, like to be able to help him come to terms with what's happened to him, because what I felt this morning was that he is not okay with it right now. So that was pretty hard. But yeah, it's things like that you're just, I remember 9/11 was crazy. I think me and a couple of the psychics that I'm colleagues with, our phones were off the hook that day. And I've been to New York many times, and I will never go to that spot because it's incredibly stressful. Just because the energy is so thick there's still people roaming around that area. Like, but when that happened, people wanted to know if people were okay and what was going to happen and all these different things. And so shootings, the Columbine shooting was intense. So, there's all these things that happen in our lives that are intense. On my way down here, I felt a murder, and I don't know I don't feel like it's the police officer, so I don't know if anybody here, I don't want to really get started yet till I say my prayer, but I just want to put it out, like, I don't know if anybody here knows anybody that was murdered, but there's definitely some interesting murder energy that was on my way down here. I don't know what that was, so we'll see what that is, but they're just kind of weird. So there's some interesting energy. So anyways, any questions so far?